Christine. I'm calling off the North Pole expedition.
Raoul, why?
I shall cut it off if I am not told the secret of the man's voice.
Hush, in heaven's name! Suppose he heard you!
I will remove you from his power, Christine. I swear it. And you shall not think of him anymore.
Is it possible? Soon we shall go, farther and faster than the clouds, to the end of the world. And then you will leave me, Raoul. But when the moment comes for you to take me away, I refuse to go with you, well then, Raoul, you must carry me off by force.
Are you afraid you will change your mind?
I don't know. He's a demon. I'm afraid now of going back to live with him. In the ground.
What compels you to go back?
If I do not go back to him, terrible misfortune may happen. But I can't do it. I can't. I know one ought to be sorry for people who live underground, but he is too horrible. I have one day left, and if I do not go, he will come and fetch me with his voice, and he will drag me with him underground, and go on his knees before me with his death's head, and he will tell me that he loves me, and he will cry. Oh, those tears, Raoul, those tears in the two black sockets of the death's head. I cannot see those tears flow again.
No. You shall never again hear him tell you that he loves you. You shall not see his tears. Let us fly, Christine. Let us fly at once.
No, not now. It will be too cruel. Let him hear me sing tomorrow evening, and then we will go away. You must come and fetch me in my dressing room at midnight exactly. He will be waiting for me in the dining room by the lake. We shall be free, and you shall take me away. You must promise me that, Raoul. Even if I refuse, for I feel that if I go back this time, I shall perhaps never return. What was that?
What? I heard nothing.
It's too terrible to be always trembling like this, and yet we run no danger here. We are at home, in the sky, in the open air, in the light. The sun is flaming, and night birds cannot bear to look at the sun. I've never seen him by daylight. It must be awful. Oh, the first time I saw him, I thought he was going to die.
Why?
Because I had seen him.
There is someone in pain. Perhaps someone has been hurt. Did you hear?
I can't say. Even when he's not there, my ears are full of his sighs. Still, if you heard...
Tell me how you saw him first.
I had heard him for 3 months without seeing him. The first time I heard it, I thought, as you did, that adorable voice was singing in another room. I went out and looked everywhere, but, as you know, Raoul, my dressing room's very much by itself, and I could not find the voice outside my room, whereas it went on steadily inside. And it not only sang, but it spoke to me and answered my questions, like a real man's voice, with this difference, that it was as beautiful as the voice of an angel. I'd never got the angel of music whom my poor father had promised to send me as soon as he was dead. It asked leave to give me lessons every day. I agreed, and never failed to keep the appointment which it gave me in my dressing room. You have no idea, though you've heard the voice, of what those lessons were like.
No, I have no idea. What was your accompaniment?
We were accompanied by music which I do not know. It was behind the wall and wonderfully accurate. The voice seemed to understand mine exactly, to know precisely where my father had left off teaching me. In a few weeks' time, I hardly knew myself when I sang. It was a curious thing, but outside the dressing room, I sang with my ordinary, everyday voice, and no one noticed anything. I did all that the voice asked. It said, "Wait and see. We shall astonish Paris." And I waited and lived on in a sort of ecstatic dream. It was then that I saw you for the first time one evening, in the house. I was so glad I'd never thought of concealing my delight when I reached my dressing room. Unfortunately, the voice was there before me and soon noticed, by my air, that something had happened. It had asked what was the matter, and I saw no reason for keeping our story secret, or concealing the place where you filled my heart. Then the voice was silent. I called to it, but it did not reply. I begged and entreated, but in vain. I was terrified lest it had gone for good. I wish it to heaven it had, dear. The hours during which the voice taught me were spent in a divine frenzy, until at last the voice said to me, "You can now, Christine Daae, give to men a little of the music of heaven." I don't know how it was that Carlotta did not come to the theater that night, nor why I was called upon to sing in her stead, but I sang with a rapture I'd never known before, and I felt for a moment as if my soul were leaving my body.
Oh, Christine, my heart quivered that night at every account of your voice. I saw the tears stream down your cheeks, and I wept with you. But after all, you soon came to know the truth. Why did you not at once rid yourself of that abominable nightmare?
Know the truth, Raoul? Rid myself of that nightmare? But, my poor boy, I was not caught in the nightmare until the day when I learned the truth. Pity me, Raoul, pity me. You remember the terrible evening when Carlotta thought she'd been turned into a toad on the stage, and when the house was suddenly plunged in darkness through the chandelier crashing to the floor? 3 were killed and wounded that night, and the whole theater rang with terrified screams. My first thought was for you and the voice. I was at once easy where you were concerned, for I had seen you in your brother's box, and I knew that you were not in danger. But the voice had told me that it would be at the performance, and I was really afraid for it, just as if it had been an ordinary person who was capable of dying. I thought to myself, the chandelier may have come down upon the voice. I was then on the stage and was nearly running into the house to look for the voice among the killed and wounded, when I thought that, if the voice was safe, it would be sure to be in my dressing room, and I rushed to my room. The voice was not there. I locked my door and, with tears in my eyes, besought it, if it were still alive, to manifest itself to me. The voice did not reply, but suddenly I heard a long, beautiful wail which I knew well. It is the plaint of Lazarus. It was the music which you and I, Raoul, heard at Perrault. And then the voice began to sing the leading phrase, "Come and believe in me. Whoso believe in me shall live, walk. Whoso hath believed in me shall never die." I cannot tell you the effect which that music had upon me. It seemed to command me personally to come, to stand up and come to it. It retreated, and I followed. "Come and believe in me." And I believed in it. I came, and this was the extraordinary thing. My dressing room, as I moved, seemed to lengthen out. Evidently, it must have been an effect of mirrors, for I had the mirror in front of me. But suddenly, I was outside the room without knowing how.
What? Without knowing how? Christine, you must have been dreaming.
I was not dreaming, dear. I was outside my room without knowing how. You, who saw me disappear from my room one evening, may be able to explain it, but I cannot. I can only tell you that, suddenly, there was no mirror before me, and no dressing room. I was in a dark passage. I was frightened, and I cried out. It was quite dark, but for a faint red glimmer at a distant corner of the wall. I cried out. My voice was the only sound, for the singing and the violin had stopped. And suddenly, a hand was laid on mine. Or rather, a stone-cold, bony thing that seized my wrist and did not let go. I cried out again. An arm took me round the waist and supported me. I struggled for a little while and then gave up the attempt. I was dragged toward the little red light, and then I saw that I was in the hands of a man, wrapped in a large cloak and wearing a mask that hid his whole face. I made one last effort. My limbs stiffened. My mouth opened to scream, but a hand closed it. A hand which I felt on my lips, on my skin. A hand that smelt of death. Then I fainted away. When I opened my eyes, we were still surrounded by darkness. A lantern standing on the ground showed a bubbling well. The water splashing from the well disappeared almost at once. Under the floor on which I was lying, with my head on the knee of the man in the black cloak and the black mask. He was bathing my temples and his hands smelled of death. I tried to push them away and asked, "Who are you? Where was the voice?" His only answer was a sigh. Suddenly, a hot breath passed over my face and I perceived a white shape beside the man's black shape in the darkness. The black shape lifted me onto the white shape. A glad neighing greeted my astounded ears, and I murmured, "Caesar!" The animal quivered. Raoul, I was lying half back on a saddle, and I had recognized the white horse out of the Profeta, which I had so often fed with sugar and sweets. I remembered that one evening there was a rumor in the theater that the horse disappeared and that it had been stolen by the opera ghost. I believed in the voice, but I never believed in the ghost. Now, however, I began to wonder, with a shiver, whether I was the ghost prisoner. I called upon the voice to help me, for I should never have imagined that the voice and the ghost were one. You've heard about the opera ghost, have you not, Raoul?
Yes, but tell me, what happened when you were on the white horse out of the Prophet?
I made no movement and let myself go. The black shape held me up, and I made no effort to escape. A curious feeling of peacefulness came over me, and I thought that I must be under the influence of some cordial. I had the full command of my senses, and my eyes became used to the darkness, which was lit here and there by fitful gleams. I calculated that we were in a narrow circular gallery, probably running all around the opera, which was immense underground. I had once been down into these cellars, but had stopped at the 3rd floor, though there were 2 lower still, large enough to hold a town. But the figures of which I caught sight had made me run away. The shape was still holding me up, and Caesar walked on, unled and sure-footed. I could not tell you, even approximately, how long this ride lasted. I only know that we seemed to turn and often went down a spiral stair into the very heart of the earth. Even then, it may be that my head was turning, but I don't think so. No, my mind was quite clear. At last, Caesar raised his nostrils, sniffed the air, and quickened his pace a little. I felt a moistness in the air, and Caesar stopped. The darkness had lifted. A sort of bluey light surrounded us. We were on the edge of a lake, whose laden waters stretched into the distance, into the darkness. But the blue light lit up the bank, and I saw a little boat fastened onto the iron ring on the wharf.
A boat?
Yes, but I knew that all that existed, and that there was nothing supernatural about that underground lake and boat. But think of the exceptional conditions in which I arrived upon that shore, I don't know whether the effects of the cordial had worn off when the man shapelifted me into the boat, but my terror began all over again. My gruesome escort must have noticed it, for he sent Caesar back, and I heard his hoofs trampling up a staircase while the man jumped into the boat, untied the rope that held it, and seized the oars. He rowed with a quick, powerful stroke, and his eyes, under the mask, never left me. We slipped across the noiseless water in the bluey light which I told you of. Then we were in the dark again, and we touched shore. And I was once more taken up in the man's arms. I cried aloud, and then suddenly I was silent, dazed by the light, yes, a dazzling light in the midst of which I had been put down. I sprang to my feet. I was in the middle of a drawing room that seemed to me to be decorated, adorned and furnished with nothing but flowers. Flowers both magnificent and stupid, because of the silk ribbons that tied them to baskets, like those which they sell in shops on the boulevards. They were much too civilized flowers, like those which I used to find in my dressing room after a first night. And in the midst of all these flowers stood the black shape of the man in the mask, with arms crossed. And he said,
"Don't be afraid, Christine. You are in no danger."
It was the voice! My anger equaled my amazement. I rushed at the mask and tried to snatch it away, so as to see the face of the voice. The man said,
"You are in no danger so long as you do not touch the mask."
And taking me gently by the wrists, he forced me into a chair and then went down on his knees before me and said nothing more. His humility gave me back some of my courage. The light restored me to the realness of life. However extraordinary the adventure might be, I was now surrounded by mortal, visible, tangible things. The furniture, the hangings, the candles, the vases, and the very flowers in their baskets, of which I could almost have told where they came and what they cost, were bound to confine my imagination to the limits of a drawing room, quite as commonplace as any that, at least, had the excuse of not being in the cellars of the opera. The voice which I had not recognized under the mask was on its knees before me, was a man, and I began to cry. The man, still kneeling, must have understood the cause of my tears, for he said,
"It is true, Christine. I am not an angel, nor a genius, nor a ghost. I am Eric."
I at once fainted from shock, and when I woke up, I was alone, lying on a sofa in a simply furnished little bedroom, with an ordinary mahogany bedstead, lit up by a lamp standing on the marble top of an old Louis Philippe chest of drawers. I soon discovered that I was a prisoner, and that the only outlet from my room led to a very comfortable bathroom. On returning to the bedroom, I saw on the chest of drawers a note, in red ink, which said,
"My dear Christine, you need have no concern as to your fate. You have no better, no more respectful of a friend in the world than myself. You are alone at present, in this home which is yours. I'm going out shopping to fetch you all the things that you can need."
I felt sure that I'd fallen into the hands of a madman. I ran round my little apartment, looking for a way of escape which I could not find. I upbraided myself for my absurd superstition, which had caused me to fall into the trap. I felt inclined to laugh and to cry at the same time. This was the state of mind in which Eric found me. After giving 3 taps on the wall, he walked in quietly through a door which I had not noticed, and which he had left open. He had his arms full of boxes and parcels and arranged them on the bed, in a leisurely fashion, while I overwhelmed him with abuse, and called upon him to take off his mask, if it covered the face of an honest man.
"You shall never see Eric's face."
And he reproached me with not having finished dressing at that time of day. He was good enough to tell me that it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He said he would give me half an hour, and, while he spoke, wound up my watch and set it for me. after which he asked me to come to the dining room where a nice lunch was waiting for us. I was very angry, slammed the door in his face, and went to the bathroom. When I came out again, feeling greatly refreshed, Eric said that he loved me, but that he would never tell me so except when I allowed him, and that the rest of the time would be devoted to music. "What do you mean by the rest of the time?" I asked.
5 days.
He said, with decision. I asked him if I should then be free, and he replied,
You will be free, Christine. For when those 5 days are past, you will have learned to see me, and then, from time to time, you will come to see your poor Eric.
He pointed to a chair opposite him at a small table, and I sat down feeling greatly perturbed. However, I ate a few prawns and the wing of a chicken and drank half a glass of Daae, which he had himself, he told me, brought from the Königsberg cellars. Eric did not eat or drink. I asked him what his nationality was, and if that name of Eric did not point to his Scandinavian origins. He said that he had no name and no country, and that he had taken the name of Eric by accident. After lunch, he rose and gave me the tips of his fingers, saying he would like to show me over his flat, but I snatched away my hand and gave a cry. What I had touched was cold and, at the same time, bony, and I remembered that his hands smelt of death.
Oh, forgive me.
He moaned, and he opened the door before me.
This is my bedroom. You care to see it? It is rather curious.
His manners, his words, his attitude gave me confidence, and I went in without hesitation. I felt as if I were entering the room of a dead person. The walls were all hung with black, but instead of the white trimmings that usually set off the funeral upholstery, there was an enormous stave of music with the notes of the Dies Irae, many times repeated. In the middle of a room was a canopy, from which hung the curtains of red brocaded stuff, and under the canopy, an open coffin.
This is where I sleep. One has to get used to everything in life, even to eternity.
The sight upset me so much that I turned away my head. Then I saw the keyboard of an organ which filled one whole side of the walls. On the desk was a music book covered with red notes. I asked leave to look at it and read Don Juan Triumphant.
Yes, I compose sometimes. I began that work 20 years ago. When I have finished, I shall take it away with me in that coffin, and never wake up again.
You must work at it as seldom as you can.
I sometimes work at it for 14 days and nights together, during which I live on music only, and then I rest for years at a time.
Will you play me something out of your Don Juan Triumphant?
You must never ask me that. I will play you Mozart if you like, which will only make you weep, but my Don Juan, Christine, burns, and yet he is not struck by fire from heaven, but from hell.
Thereupon we returned to the drawing room. I noticed that there was no mirror in the whole apartment. I was going to remark upon this, but Eric had already sat down to the piano. He said,
You see, Christine, there is some music that is so terrible that it consumes all those who approach it. Fortunately, you have not come to know that music yet, for you would lose all your pretty coloring and nobody would know you when you return to Paris. Let us sing something from the opera, Christine, Daae.
What did you do?
I had no time to think about the meaning he put into his words. We at once began the duet in Othello, and already the catastrophe was upon us. I sang Desdemona with a despair, a terror which I had never displayed before. As for him, his voice thundered forth his vengeful soul at every note. Love, jealousy, hatred burst out around us in harrowing cries. Eric's black mask made me think of the natural mask of the Moor of Venice. He was a fellow himself. Suddenly, I felt a need to see beneath the mask. I wanted to know the face of the voice, and with a movement which I was utterly unable to control, swiftly, my fingers tore away the mask.
No! Look! You wanted to see? See! Feast your eyes! Glut your soul on my cursed ugliness! Look at Eric's face! Now you know the face of the voice! You're not content to hear me, eh? You want to know what I looked like! You women are so inquisitive! Well, are you satisfied? I'm a very good-looking fellow, eh? When a woman has seen me as you have, she belongs to me. She loves me forever. I'm a kind of Don Juan, you know. Look at me. I am Don Juan Triumphant.
Enough! I will kill him!
Oh, Raoul, listen! He dragged me by my hair and then... Oh, it was horrible.
Well, what? Out with it! Out with it, quick!
Then he hissed at me.
Ah, I frighten you, do I? I dare say. Perhaps you think that I have another mask, eh? That this, my head is a mask. Well, tear it off! Tear it off as you did the other! Come along, I insist! Your hands, give me your hands! Know that I'm built up of death from head to toe, and that it is a corpse that loves you, and adores you, and will never leave you. Look, I'm not laughing now. I'm crying. Crying for you, Christine, who has torn off my mask and who therefore can never leave me again. As long as you thought me handsome, you could have come back. I know you would have come back. But now that you know my hideousness, you would run away for good. So I shall keep you here. Why did you want to see me? Oh, mad Christine, who wanted to see me? When my own father never saw me, and when my mother, so as not to see me, presented me with my first mask.
Eric, show me your face without fear. I swear that you are the most unhappy and sublime of men, and if ever again I shiver when I look at you, it will be because I am thinking of the splendor of your genius. Then Eric turned round, for he believed me, and I also had faith in myself. He fell at my feet with words of love, in his dead mouth, and the music had ceased. He kissed the hem of my dress and did not see that I closed my eyes. What more can I tell you, dear? You now know the tragedy. It went on for a fortnight during which I lied to him. My lies were as hideous as the monster who inspired them, but they were the price of my liberty. I burned his mask, and I managed so well that, even when he was not singing, he tried to catch my eye, like a dog sitting by its master. He was my faithful slave and paid me endless little attentions. Gradually, I gave him such confidence that he ventured to take me walking on the banks of the lake and to row me in the boat on its laden waters. Toward the end of my captivity, he let me out through the gates that closed the underground passage in the Rue Scribe. At last, after a fortnight of that horrible captivity, during which I was filled with pity, enthusiasm, despair, and horror by turns, he believed me when I said I will come back.
And you went back, Christine. Ugh.
Yes, dear. And I must tell you that it was not his frightful threats when setting me free that helped me to keep my word, but the harrowing sob which he gave on the threshold of the tomb, That sob attached me to the unfortunate man more than I myself suspected when saying goodbye to him. Poor Eric. Poor Eric.
Christine, you must tell me that you love me. But you had recovered your liberty hardly a few hours before you returned to Eric. Remember the masked ball?
Yes, and remember that those few hours I passed with you, Raoul, to the great danger of both of us.
I doubted your love for me during those hours.
Do you still doubt it, Raoul? Then know that each of my visits to Eric increased my horror of him. For each of these visits, instead of calming him as I hoped, he was mad with love. And I'm so frightened. So frightened.
You are frightened? But do you love me? If Eric were good-looking, would you love me, Christine?
Oh, my betrothed of a day, if I did not love you, I would not give you my lips. Take them, for the first time and the last.